Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Sanjeev Goel here from Peak Human Labs. And today we have an episode with my good friend Carmelia Ray and podcast host, co-host. We're going to be talking about 5 diets. We're going to pick 5 of them. There are many out there, but 5 of the most common diets out there. We're going to do a little bit of a deep dive, give our thoughts on them, see what the research is, and we'll take it from there. So tell us, Carmelia, why you thought this was a timely one to do.
Well, we recently did the episode on alcohol and how it affects our brain and body because it's the new year where we're filming right now. And January is the time for people to be focusing a lot on, I find, 3 major things. Their health, obviously, finances, and relationships. So we should cover all of those. So in terms of diet, everybody has this, they want to lose weight. They're reflecting on the past year. They feel like January is a perfect time to start over. And so gym memberships are up. The dating industry that I work in is booming. So people are interested in this. So I thought it would be great because even with online dating, there's thousands of sites. Like, where do I go? And I feel like if we dive deeper on the different diets and who they're good for, what they're about, the science behind it from you,
for sure,
we can help people make better choices about what's best for them. Right?
Okay, so let's do these ones today, if that's okay. We can talk about the Paleo Diet.
Okay.
Let's talk about the Keto Diet.
Yes.
Let's talk about the Carnivore Diet.
Oh, yes, I've heard that one.
Vegan Diet.
Okay.
And if we have time, we'll talk about intermittent fasting as well.
Wonderful. Okay, that's great. All right, so let's start with the Paleo. Is it? I was calling it Paleo. What's it?
Paleo.
Paleo Diet.
Paleo
okay.
Diet. But actually, before we even go, I want to just talk about the word diet because I think we generally, diet has a really negative connotation because of this kind of, people go on a Weight Watchers diet, and it's always meant to be like this short-term kind of fix going on to this fad type of diet, which is never really long-lasting. People don't have those long-lasting effects whenever they're going on a diet per se. So I think we need to start thinking about more, not diet, but a lifestyle, like, eating philosophy or what. I don't know what the right word is, but I don't think diet really does it justice because these are really meant to be almost permanent changes that people are going to make. Sometimes people go in and out of different food ways of eating, and they change that. And that might be healthy as well. So I think it's maybe a different way of looking at it.
Yeah, I agree. When people say they're on a diet, it's usually, people attach that to, they got to a point that they didn't like themselves or something needs to happen, that they have to follow this regimented routine. And so when people say I'm dieting, what's wrong? Is your blood sugar? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
you would
I
do a
love
diet when there's some type of crisis where we've reached a certain weight. But what we're trying to say here is you don't need to wait to be in that type of crisis to make a significant change. Probably we all could improve our eating habits.
Yes.
And you don't need, you could be in great health and, already and want to just stay in great health.
Yeah, and maybe for our viewers, the exercise to look at if somebody's not a fan of dieting is as we explore the different types of diets that we're looking at, they may take the bits and pieces that they either choose one or they follow the healthy habits that are in each of these, because there's pros and cons to all of them. That's what we want to really talk about.
Yeah, there's no question, like when people went to Weight Watchers, the big problem was they'd lose weight, but there'd be a big rebound weight gain. And so that's what we really want to avoid, is that people have those types of ups and downs, fluctuations. That's not healthy. That's not good for the metabolism to have that. So
may I just add one thing? For the definition, I thought this is really interesting. So the definition in the dictionary, diet, the kinds of food that a person, animal, or community habitually eats.
Got it.
So that's one. But the second one says a special course of food to which a person restricts themselves, either to lose weight or for medical reasons. So there's 2 contexts here.
I'll go with the first.
The first. We're gonna talk about diets that are part of your habitual eating.
Yeah.
All right. Let's do that.
Okay, so let's start maybe with the Paleo Diet's a really good way to start because it's pretty popular. It hit its peak in about 2014, so maybe around 10 years ago is when people were really talking about the Paleo Diet. And what it really talks about is we should be eating back to the way our Paleolithic ancestors were eating, our like cavemen ancestors.
That's where it came from?
Yeah.
The word paleo?
Paleo, yeah.
Okay,
Paleolithic,
caveman.
certain type of time period, agriculture.
Okay.
So if you look at the type of diet that is, it's generally a diet that's what a hunter-gatherer would eat. So it would be whole foods, lean meats, seafood and eggs, a variety of vegetables, but generally root-based vegetables. Because again, those would be what
They
hunter-gatherers would be
dug
pulling.
from the ground,
Digging,
yeah.
Turnips and onions and things like that would be what they'd be pulling and potatoes. There'd be nuts and seeds again. These hunter-gatherers would be able to forage these nuts and seeds. There would be fruits, that's obvious, and unrefined oils and avocados. So all things that a hunter-gatherer would be able to eat. And what would they not be eating is processed foods.
I just like literally they can't buy anything with MSG or like cheeses, certain cheeses, right? Like
No dairy products at all.
Yeah, no dairy at all.
So dairy is really came onto the scene
processed.
for humans when agriculture came around, because that's when humans started to have cows around. Before that, there were no real cows, because cows are a domesticated animal. So all of this whole farmed animals and all the products of that are not part of the paleo diet. So what there is not on the paleo diet, no processed foods, no whole grains, so no rice. Again, rice is an agricultural staple. Soya.
Like it has to go through some kind of a process.
Big farming.
Right. Got
Again,
you.
paleo diet, again, to be before farming. No dairy products, no legumes. Even legumes, beans and lentils and so on are not part of a paleo diet.
Wow.
And then any type of refined, obviously alcohol, coffee, adding salt and refined oils are not
Yeah,
part
because
of
they
this
didn't
at
spice food. They just ate it as is, right?
all. So that's the science
very
behind it.
cool.
So it looks like when they looked at they compared the paleo diet to what we called the standard American diet, which is called the SAD diet.
Okay.
They found that these people had greater weight loss, decreased blood pressure and cholesterol, improved insulin sensitivity, all within a 6-month period. So it looks like it's a successful, if one can eat that way,
Yes.
it looks like it's a very good option. And I think the biggest takeaway when there's been many studies looking at processed food versus non-processed food is that the processed food is leading to weight gain. And it's and if we're eating as much as we can a non-processed food, we're going to probably have a lot of benefits. So I think that's the takeaway I take from the paleo diet is that eat as much as you can to eating whole foods, non-processed foods. That would be the takeaway for me, this particular diet. What do you think about it? Would you do this type of diet, or what's your thinking?
I like the simplicity of it. Literally, if I'm at the store, was this processed, or could if I were a caveman, would I have to go to the store to get it? You know what I mean? So I think in principle, eating whole foods or making more, if I were to follow this, not wholeheartedly, I'd say, let me try the 80-20. 80% of my diet and meal is going to come from the whole food choices. And maybe 20% would mean 2 days a week I'm going to not follow that.
Well, we're going to go through some other diets, and you can take some aspects from that.
I like that.
But I think one of the criticisms of this diet has been that it's expensive to get these foods. So people who are, don't have the financial ability, they might find that this type of diet is much more expensive to be on.
I find it interesting how eating healthier
It's definitely more expensive.
is more expensive. Yeah. It's like it's a premium fuel that you're putting in, and everybody's got regular. They can only afford regular gas, but we need premium fuel. So, I mean, it's unfortunate, but if you can do it, try to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's start to move into now the keto diet, because I think we may have talked about this on a previous episode. And the idea in a keto diet is to have about 70% fat.
Okay.
Okay, and the paleo diet by far is a little bit more protein. But keto diet is about 70% fat, 5 or 10% carbs, and the remaining 15% protein. So you can see that's a very high fat diet. And why are people doing this? Because our bodies are normally burning glucose, sugars for energy.
Okay.
But there is an alternative system that utilizes fat and breaks that down into beta hydroxybutyrate and then ketones that our body can use that. So our body can use fat stores for energy.
Right. So the thing that always shocked me about the keto diet is that when you are seeing these people who are losing weight, eating high amounts of fat. It just the brain doesn't compute that for me, right? Like, what is it about the high fat? Is it just the complete elimination or the total elimination of carbohydrates? Like, from the science base, why does it make sense for someone to eat all this cheese and high fat and avocado versus, a slice of toast?
Yeah, we should look at the macronutrients, which is the composition of how much carbohydrates, fat, and protein. Those are important. So
Okay.
for sure, carbohydrates cause a release of insulin.
Yep.
And, insulin does potentially cause weight gain. So I think that the danger is that the benefit of the keto diet is that if you remove the carbohydrates and you just have the fat, the negative fat effects of the fat aren't so bad.
Okay.
It's when you're mixing saturated fat with carbohydrates is when you get into a problem. Simple carbohydrates with saturated fats cause an issue. Them together, and most of the keto diets, people are not eating that many calories. Like, the total amount of calories is actually not that much compared to, because most of the calories are sitting in carbohydrates.
Got it.
Right?
So,
Carbohydrates make you hungry.
yeah,
Eating sweets make you hungry.
What's the time frame? I don't know if it's based on genetics or per body.
Yeah.
How long would it take for someone to get into ketosis, as they call it? Like, how do you get into ketosis?
So generally, most people eat about 200, 300 grams of carbohydrates per day.
Okay.
Now, when somebody eats less than about 50 to 100, less than that, their body is now starting to use energy that's
Stored.
beyond the use of carbohydrates. They need to use
Right.
fat. Sorry, they need to use fat for their energy stores. And when they break down the fat, that builds up ketones in the body. So we could potentially always be using a little bit of ketones for energy, but there's a certain switch that happens that once you eating less carbs, your body's going to start using more fat for energy. So it's not an all or nothing system.
Right.
But generally, if once you stop eating, let's say you stop eating in the evening, by the morning, you're already in some amount of ketosis.
Yeah. So for most people who are, and I know we're going to talk about other diets. So
Yeah.
as you sleep, because if you're having a long sleep, when you wake up, someone could be experiencing ketosis. Like, our body does go into ketosis during sleep time to a degree.
Any type of time, about, I would say 12 hours
12 hours
after
or
not
more. Okay.
eating, your ketones start to increase.
Okay.
And they will peak about 2 days after. So
Okay.
yeah, it does take some time to get into full ketosis, but it's a process. And I think the more your body is able to make that switch, the better your body gets at switching between carbohydrates and fat for fuel.
So in the keto diet, are they saying it's a total elimination of carbohydrates, like cutting out obvious carbs such as rice or things like that? Because there's carbs found in certain foods.
There's a lot of carbs everywhere.
Everywhere?
But I like the way that they look at it generally is counting number of grams.
Okay.
So that's why it's saying it's about 5 to 10% is carbs.
Okay.
So
Have you ever tried the keto diet?
Yeah, I have. I have tried it. It's quite difficult for someone like me who's a vegetarian.
Yeah.
But it's still doable.
Right.
There are keto vegans out there, but it's not a very easy diet to do. And people do tend to feel this kind of keto flu, where they have this headache and they just don't feel right and they feel tired because, again, the body's not used to making that switch because almost 95% of the time we are eating carbs for energy.
Got you.
And in the old days, again, if we talk back to where our ancestors were as hunter-gatherers, they were probably alternating between keto and fat for fuel and carbs for fuel regularly.
Right.
So they would have a kill, they would eat it, or they'd be able to get some food, and then they'd have no food for a few days, and then they'd be in ketosis again, and then they would come back and have a feast again. So feast famine was very common.
Yeah, so it's high fat, low carbs. From a physician, medium protein. From a physician's point of view, where would there be people that should not be considering the keto diet?
No, I think it's
like, let's say somebody who has cholesterol issues. Would someone say, don't do that?
It depends how you do the keto.
Okay.
So if you're going to have hamburgers
every day, yeah.
then and a lot of saturated fat, and then there may be some risk of increasing your cholesterol.
Right.
So it's also the amount of calories.
Right. Okay.
So I think that
So there are
it's
other
always
considerations.
It's
Okay.
always a nuanced answer
Okay.
about whether or not it's safe to be on keto. I think it's more about what type of fat are they taking in? Are they
Right.
taking healthy fats in, or are they taking, unhealthy saturated fats?
Yeah, because that could be the detriment is that people are justifying. I'm on keto, but they're choosing every unhealthy type of fat and every kind of food that doesn't follow the guidelines for healthy eating. So
Yeah, and the other thing is that if there's a risk of losing out on some of the nutrients of vegetables. Like there
Okay.
are obviously lots of minerals and vitamins that sit in vegetables that are not in meat. So that might be one thing to also be aware of.
got it.
But generally, the science is pretty good that people do lose weight on a keto diet. Their insulin sensitivity improves, and for those who can hack it, they have a lot of health benefits. So I think it may be just difficult to continue it beyond a few months because it does require.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I feel as if of the diets we talked about, keto might be one of those diets that you do in phases. I
Yeah.
kind of feel like it's
Kind of
not
a phased
necessarily a life, like being in ketosis your whole life. I don't know. That might be hard.
Yeah, I'm not sure we're necessarily meant for that. It's
Yeah.
probably good to have these ketosis breaks, and that's why
Yeah.
fasting. Now, if you look at the benefits of fasting, very similar to ketosis, like ketogenic diet, because when you're fasting, the exact same thing is happening.
Right.
You're in effect using your own fat stores for energy, and ketones are building up, and there's lots of benefits to fasting.
Okay.
So, but again, you can't fast for more than 30 days.
Right. Okay.
So, without, becoming seriously ill. So I think that it's healthy. It's good to
Yes.
fast at least a few days a week potentially.
Okay.
And I don't know if we have time to talk about that, but definitely fasting is one of those important things. Let's move on to the
Vegetarian.
Yeah,
The vegan.
Yeah, I want to talk specifically about vegan because vegetarian or flexitarian, and we could just talk about the definitions.
Sure,
It's
sure.
just so broad.
Yeah.
It can mean anything.
Okay.
So the terms are vegetarian, which means eating no animal products.
Anything
No
that
animal
was
byproducts, okay?
that was made by an animal,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, and usually when we're not eating any animal byproducts, it's called a vegan.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
if you're
got
eating dairy products, it's called a lacto-vegetarian. If you're
Okay.
eating ovo,
I feel like these diets have pronouns now. Like
Yeah, because there's
all
just
these
so many
pronouns for diets.
There's so many different
Yeah.
things. If you're eating eggs, it's called ovo, and if you're eating dairy, that's ovo-lacto-vegetarian. So there's many different terms to that.
Wow.
And pescatarian is someone eats fish.
So there really are quite a lot of varieties of how you're choosing, but it sounds to me that it's largely more plant-based options.
I think that's the
Yeah.
big thing here is that, probably our ancestors were not eating meat. At least going back to the agricultural societies, they were not eating meat every day, or maybe it was
because they couldn't hunt it fast enough,
they were eating
right?
small
Like,
amounts.
Yeah.
Meat was a luxury item. They were farming these animals, but the animals were giving them dairy products, which they need to keep, or the animals were helping them with labor.
Yeah.
So they're not going to eat them. Like it didn't
Yeah,
make a lot
yeah.
of sense to do that. So
Do I want to plow my field or eat the buffalo?
Exactly. So I think that there's a reason why these diets have been around. But the science behind a plant-based diet, if you want to call it a plant-based diet, is pretty strong in that people have a lot of health benefits, decreased cardiovascular disease, potentially decreased cancer, generally have lower weight, decreased inflammation. So, but again, it does depend on what type of food you're going to eat. If you're going to there's lots of people out there who say I'm vegetarian, but then they're having ice cream. Well, then that doesn't.
Well, there's vegan ice cream, but
Even
but
vegan
they're
ice
having
cream.
regular ice cream. I
Even
got it,
vegan
yeah.
ice cream. It's not about necessarily the meat product. It's more about how much processed food is in it.
Right.
And how much
okay.
sugar is in that.
Got it.
That's actually, I think, a bigger concern for people to consider.
Because the myth that I have seen is that there are people who are vegetarian or vegan that can't be overweight, and yet there are people on vegan who don't eat animal products that are overweight, right? Because they could be eating too much bread or too much pasta or something like that. Correct? It's not just about eating plant-based. Unless vegans grains are in vegan diets?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
Plant-based, diet, yeah.
Okay.
And then some people do have sensitivities to certain grains, like, barley, oats,
what do they call it? The
gluten sensitivity.
gluten. That's right. That's right.
Some people have sensitivity to that. It's a real thing. So,
Okay.
if one is having symptoms, you need to get checked out for that.
Okay.
And this society seems like there seems to be increased number of people who have a sensitivity or actual true allergy.
Now, some people have chosen let's talk about the fact that some people choose the vegan diet or vegetarian diet because of the moral, impact. They don't want anything to do with animals or harm to animals. But are there reasons why I find that when people go vegetarian or vegan, they tend to do that very long term and permanent? Is it, in your mind, an easier diet to maybe follow than some of these other ones? You yourself being
I've been
vegetarian?
for many years now. I don't think it's that easy to do it, especially on a healthy basis.
Okay.
Though it's become a lot easier. Like,
Okay.
there are a lot more options now. There's Beyond Meat burgers, Impossible Burgers. So things have become a lot easier than they used to be.
Because of the taste and
And availability.
availability.
Yes,
Okay.
there's no question. But I think the whole moral thing is maybe a topic for a different discussion. But on strictly health benefits, seems like a vegan diet seems to be quite healthy. There are a couple of caveats. One is that figure out what exactly you're eating, because the studies have shown that vegans tend to eat less protein.
Yes.
And it's important to eat protein because you need that to build lean body mass.
Well, I'm prone to anemia, which is an iron deficiency. And when I've been to a previous doctor, now Sanjeev's my doctor, when I did my blood work, I had noticed that my anemia was directly related to the lack of meat that I was eating. And yet I probably wasn't consuming the right types of proteins, consciously knowing that I needed to pick some proteins that were higher in, or some non-meat options that were higher in these proteins. So I think that's why it's important for anybody considering a diet. Are they getting the whole balanced picture, right? We're here to sort of identify, if you're choosing this, be mindful of that, because it's not just, there's so much going on. We make so many conscious decisions about, work, or maybe what time we work out and things like that. And it seems to me that diet is one of the areas, diet and exercise combined, that people can forget about, or they just take advantage of. And that's why it only happens when, oh my God, I have heartburn, or I got all this extra weight, or I don't have enough weight, or I feel sluggish. So this is part of the reason why I wanted to have this discussion, as I'm on my journey to losing weight and I'm trying to follow the best fit for me, right? The best fit for me.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, is that it's not one size doesn't fit all. Mm-hmm. Not, like you said, for you, that the vegan diet wouldn't work. And I know that for my wife, it doesn't work as well. So certain people, it doesn't suit them. And I think you need to figure out what suits yourself. And likely, there's not one diet that fits for us all the time either. Like, you might go through certain stages where for these few months it felt right to be on this type of diet, or these types of restrictions, or these types of foods you want to eat. And then after a couple of months it might change. It may depend on the seasons. I'm actually starting to believe that depending on the seasons of a year is how you should be eating. We probably used to eat very locally grown food, and I think our bodies are probably built for that. So when the winter comes, generally our bodies do put on weight.
Yes.
Because we're entering into like storing energy for the winter. And likely that probably even happens in the fall. Like, before the winter, we put on all this weight so that during the winter we would use all this energy, kind of like certain animals do. So I wouldn't be surprised that some things like this are happening. And so it's important to think about that. Like, what are our bodies telling us?
I think that anytime you follow any diet, like this exercise, consult your physician. So that's something that I think is an extra piece of advice, is if you're concerned about something and you're thinking, is it right for you? Maybe you should do your baseline blood work, figure out where you're at before you go do something.
Yeah, and
right?
Let's say for the vegan diet, I mean, if you're having a true vegan diet, you have a risk of becoming vitamin B12 deficient.
Okay.
And vitamin B12 is a very important vitamin for nerve function and brain function.
Right.
So, that's where you do need a supplement.
Okay.
So
Great.
I think these things are important to make sure you're not becoming deficient in any one thing. And so that's why I think that it's probably not a good idea to become super strict in anything.
Right. Okay.
It's important to have some variety, but I think that we can say that generally processed foods are a no-no.
Right.
And
Or in extreme moderation, because you don't want to have it.
Yeah, you can't. It's very difficult in our society to be no processed food, but we need to be considering. I was just reading a study just came out today on my feed, came out that they found, I don't know, some huge number of microplastics are found in a water bottle. I think some 100,000 microplastic pieces.
Well, that's why some water bottles are coming out in cardboard, right?
That's true.
I'm drinking my
I just saw that.
my water bottle, coconut water in cardboard. And that's why it's popular. I didn't even realize that.
And these microplastics can have huge effects on hormones. They act endocrine disruptors, and probably like similar to estrogen, act as certain type estrogen mimickers.
Wow.
And that's why we wonder, are these things having effects on cancer rates, on the declining testosterone levels and sperm levels in men? We don't really know. But I think instead of worrying about, hey, am I eating, again, a piece of lamb versus, a carrot, I think that it's not about that. It's about, where did that lamb come from? How was it raised?
Yes.
Was it exposed to pesticides? The carrot, where was it raised? What type? Where was it grown? What type of pesticides were applied? Is the soil rich with proper nutrients? All of these things I think are probably more important.
Yeah.
And how was it processed? How was the lamb processed? How was the carrot processed? I think we need to think about that. So I have one more. I know we had this master cleanse diet. I know you sent it to me to have a look at.
Have you heard of it, by the way?
I think I may have heard it in passing, but I haven't.
You read it? Okay.
I read it. I can read it. Yeah.
First of all, the master cleanse diet was, when I say popular, it probably falls under a fad diet style. And it was Beyonce that popularized this diet. Okay. In fact, I do believe and I'm not going to quote, but I think that any celebrity, whether it be Beyonce, Kardashians, J-Lo, whatever, if they need to lose weight fast, and just word to the wise here, this is absolutely, every single person that I've ever read about it, talked about it, is not a long-term sustainable diet whatsoever. But if you want to lose that 10 pounds in 5 days and fall over and die the next day.
I don't know. I want to jump in here that, we don't want anybody. I want to just, let me give the science on this, because I wouldn't want to recommend this diet to anybody. Beyond it being kind of a fasting diet.
Yes.
So if you want to fast, go ahead.
Then that's
and
the comparable. That's the comparable.
And that's fine. So basically, just so people understand, it's also known as a lemonade diet.
Yep.
It basically consists of fresh lemon juice, maple syrup, cayenne pepper, and water. Basically, you consume 12 times a day, avoid solid food, and voila, you're on fast track to a detox and weight loss diet. So I think it's very similar to a fasting diet. This whole idea of detox,
yes,
I don't think it's a real kind of thing. We don't really detox per se. I think when you stop eating, you give your gut a rest.
Right.
Your liver is constantly dealing with stuff, dealing with molecules and chemicals and all that, and removing them, whatever, and converting them, and you're getting rid of them. So I think, in effect, if you want to call it detox, it means you're giving your body a break.
Now, I don't know if you've heard this, Sanjeev, or if you've done it yourself. The lemon cleanse is 10 days, and it seems like a long time. However, nobody who's done it hasn't had, any long-term impact, right? It's such a short time. But I've heard of people taking on 7 days fast of just water, like a water fast, a 7-day complete water fast. That's not on this topic, and maybe we can dive into it another time, or this could be appropriate because there's not much about the master cleanse. Have you? What are your thoughts on a 7-day complete?
It's basically
water
a water fast. It's a fast.
Okay.
So I think the same benefits that happen with just not eating, because you're giving your body a break. You're moving into ketosis. You're burning fat. It's probably good for you. It's just that it's extremely difficult.
Like, I would imagine your bowels are reset. Your gut is reset. There's no food in there anymore, right?
It's good to give your bowels a rest.
Okay.
This is the science behind it, that we all need to do that. It's good to do that. We're just not used to, we're constantly eating. But again, our ancestors weren't always constantly eating. We were fasting, forced fasting. It wasn't done on purpose. But we probably need to do some of these fasting.
Yeah.
So it's giving our body a break from constant eating. And there's a lot of metabolic benefits from doing that.
So Master Cleanse is
I would say
not for everybody,
no.
but
I'm just saying
it really is more like
I
it's a
think
fast.
it's a gimmick. It's
It's a
probably a
gimmick.
fad, but nothing wrong. And you can do that, but it's pretty much a fast.
Okay.
You know,
What do people need to be mindful for as they're going through any type of fast? What are the negative impacts? Because I find when I go through a fast, I get this pounding headache, and that's because I'm getting rid of the coffee and the caffeine. Now that's what I've associated with is having these caffeine headaches. Is coffee? We didn't talk about coffee, but is that? Why do people get those caffeine headaches? Is it because we're just used to it? Why are we getting a headache?
It's a type of dependence that's happening
Okay.
on the caffeine, and then when you remove that, you get a headache. So that's one reason. There's also fluid shifts that happen
Okay.
when we're fasting. Most people become dehydrated because they're not drinking enough water,
Okay.
and there's shifting that's happening in and out of the cells because of salt
But are they
changes.
asking? Are they saying that fasting? We're not fasting from water either, but are we also
No,
reducing?
But we're just generally food also contains water.
Okay, got it.
So there's a
Okay.
risk of constipation when you're
Oh, yeah.
fasting.
I
So
wouldn't go
it's
for
just
3
important
days.
to drink enough.
Yeah.
And that's why these diets, which talk about lemon juice and all that, it's just basically a way to make sure you're getting enough water in,
Okay.
right? And salt and all that. So that's one aspect. The other thing is that switch from carbohydrate to fat doesn't happen right away. And people get a headache because their brain is having difficulty now making the switch to using ketones for energy. And so they're getting that brain fog. They may have a headache. They feel sluggish. They're not feeling well. Hi, everyone. Dr. Sanjeev Goel from Peak Human Labs. And I hope you enjoyed today's episode on the health effects of different diets. Today, we reviewed 5 different diets. And we're going to be looking at a few more in the next episode. But if you like today's show, please like and subscribe. It goes a long way to making sure this video gets shown to other people. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on the other side.